Yeah, I'm Aistė Šivytė. I'm from Vilnius, Lithuania. I'm predominantly a theater critic, but I write about a wide variety of other stage arts as well, like dance, contemporary circus, street performances, and so on. I also work in Juozas Miltinis Drama Theatre as a public relations coordinator. I write all sorts of publicity material. I do a little bit of communication and things like that. Uh, since I've been writing critique for only about 5 years, I'm not really sure if I have a specific interest in mind, or a specific interest or theme developed in my writing, but I do have a bit of an interest in young audience theater. And since it really only is starting to be, it's only beginning to develop here in Lithuania. So it's really interesting to write about it and go a bit deeper into it. I should go with the whole story. I mean, I vividly remember being very unsatisfied and lost in my first attempt at a higher education. I began at studying Lithuanian language and literature in Vilnius University, and I chose those studies because I was lost as of what else to do. So I guess I subconsciously knew that I wanted to exist in theater. I just didn't know quite where. So I knew I don't want to be like a director or an actor or even a dramaturg. I felt like the view of the theater they get to experience is very narrow and limited to their craft. And I wanted like a panoramic view. So I remember at the end of the first semester in Vilnius University, I knew very well that I will quit these studies, and I was browsing through other study programs, desperate for anything with the word theater in it. And then I stumbled across this program of theater and film history and criticism in Lithuanian Music and Theatre Academy. And then the realization just hit instantly. I understand that that's exactly what I want to study and eventually who I want to become. I knew that I want to be a theater critic, so that realization came very early. I just wanted to see a lot of theater, to have a space to reflect on it, to write about it. So I was very aware from the beginning. But if the question is more like, when did I begin to consider myself as a critic? That's a whole different question. Because sometimes I'm not sure if I consider myself to be one even right now. But if I really qualify, but I guess it's simply because because I'm still like studying and I don't really have that much time to write about it. And sometimes I think that I'll truly consider myself to be a critic once I'll finish my master's degree and I will have only one, like my main job in the theater, and then I'll be able to dedicate all the time left from it to write critique. So then I'll be a true theater critic. I don't know, I don't think so. Because as a critic, I always had the same standards of writing ever since I started, which are to keep my reviews as understandable and reasonably sized, and to always express my honest opinion as well as I can. But I guess the only thing that changed lately is that I started to write down my main thoughts and points right after the performance, as soon as I get home, which makes writing so much easier later because you don't look at the empty page on your computer screen and you're not scared of it. So that's the only like technical thing that changed in my writing here. I feel like if we were to compare Lithuania to other countries, I would say we have it pretty good. The situation is pretty good, but it's still not really possible to make a living by simply working as a critic. That's why I said like I'm not really a full-time critic. It's impossible, really. So all of the Lithuania's critics who write about stage arts have other or like main jobs they use to support themselves. Usually they are in the field of culture, like giving lectures, working in theater administration, like I'm doing, or working in festivals and so on. So in Lithuania, being a critic is always a freelance job. You get requests from cultural press, but there is not really such a thing as a full-time critic, a position of a full-time critic in it. Some of the news portals offer collaborations, like a certain number of text per month, but that is a rarity, and it's also not a full-time position.
Mm.
On a bright note, I don't know if it's a bright note, but there isn't such a thing as rivalry among the critics here in Lithuania because there's very little of us, so everyone have their own space. But at the same time, I don't think there is enough active critics at the moment in our country, especially the young ones, because there are very little, if any, people who want to study to become critics. Like the program I mentioned before, the one I finished, like my bachelor's degree, I was the only person in that year to finish that degree. Like one person in whole year. Like that's insane. And sometimes no one finishes the degree. People just leave it. So yeah, but we have a lot of workshops right now that encourage young people to write about theater, to write critique. They are usually attached to the festivals and they invite people to watch the whole festival program and then they teach to write and to write critique about the performances. So I hope that will eventually lead some professionals into the field. I think we have quite a lot of cultural press, like quite a lot of magazines and papers. The main types would be like magazines and newspapers that combine literature publications and all sorts of art critique. Then we have a paper that publishes mostly critique and interviews with all sorts of creators. Then a few specialized monthly or quarterly, like bigger magazines about theater. And we have one about film also. Some of the main sites that and we have also internet portals that publish critique and all sorts of things related to it. And some of the main news sites that predominantly publishes news articles also have a place for critique, but there's fewer of those positions available. I think there is a positive shift happening there in that regard, the news portals, because they have started to invite critics to write reviews for them. In Lithuania, critique has always been a matter of cultural press, really. So I'm very glad to see that critique is being invited into like main news portals. It gives you hope that critique and theater will become a matter of a wider society, not only a small number of intellectuals. Like maybe a person who is just reading some news will eventually stumble across a review about a play and will read it. So it's nice. I don't really know if I have any like certain expectations. I come into this completely open-minded, but as I mentioned, I'm very excited for performance by Japanese creators because we don't see them that much here in Lithuania. And I'm very interested to get to know the local critics and to understand how critique exists in Japanese society, because as many people as I've met, it seems like the situation always differs in different countries. So yeah. And I'm also hoping to meet like-minded people. As a young critic, I haven't had much of such exchanges and such meetings, but they're always very enriching, and you learn way more from an experience or another human being rather than dig up something from books. So I'm already sure that this is gonna be a very great experience.